episode, I get the honor to speak with Judge David Katz. As this was our first judge guest on the podcast, you will notice I was extremely excited and intrigued. We talk about all things justice and how our judicial system is being improved, one legal professional at a time. We can make great things when we unite. Listen in for more. Need an extra set of hands for a case that requires a little more investigation work? Check out our proud sponsor of Season 3, Affirm Investigative Solutions, where you get the tailored and personal care for your case when you need it most. With over 10 years of experience, Affirm Investigative Solutions makes the process easy. Set up a call, develop a plan, and then execute that plan. Affirm Investigative Solutions, the litigation partner that has your back. Good afternoon and welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I'm your host, Ada Rosa, and today's guest is nothing short but amazing. It's actually our first time having a judge on the podcast, and I'm super excited because it was one of my 2022 goals. So here I am achieving one of my goals. And without further ado, the Honorable, the best, Judge David Katz. How are you?
Good afternoon. Thanks, Ada. Doing fine. And it's really an honor to be here, and I'm glad to be your first.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hopefully not the last. And I feel like we're going to be touching on a topic where it's very prominent now, especially after the pandemic. Everybody's trying to find a variety of solutions for the issues, which is access to justice. And of course, this topic has many elements. And today we're only really going to touch upon the elements that you're currently working on. But there are other elements to this topic that we know are out there. So we're just going to stick to what we know today. And then hopefully, later on, we can carry on more conversations because it's really needed. So tell us about what access to justice looks like for you in particular, especially as the judge and the president of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court. Did I get that right?
That's right. JFCJ, just to be.
Yes, there we go, for short.
Well, first of all, let me just thank you on behalf of the NCJFCJ, National Council of Juvenile Family Court Judges, for the opportunity to be with you today and talk about such an important topic. Access to justice is really, it's the key of what we do, and it's the key to our jurisprudence. And access to justice really takes many different forms. One thing, as you mentioned with the pandemic, access to justice is synonymous with timely access to justice. And coming out of the pandemic, when courts were operational but not fully operational, we at a national level have experienced significant backlogs in some courts. And our organization cuts across all dockets, all types. We think that the things that we do and the trainings we do can help all judges. But in family in particular, there is a real need to move cases because what we deal with are maybe families in crisis, children that are displaced, domestic violence victims, juveniles that are not at home due to alleged offenses, and we have to get everybody to a better place. So when there are delays, it really affects the work that we do. So one major aspect of access to justice is timely access. And what can we do? I mean, we have tremendous backlog. How do we get through it? So that's a challenge, and the NCJFCJ has put forth all kinds of materials that we invite people to share with us and to look at as to court management, as to handling a backlog. Even the way we handle cases now through Zoom is a way to save time in essence and be a little bit more responsive to the needs of the families we serve. It wasn't that long ago, Etta, that we would have packed waiting rooms. It was just the way we did business. And people would come in, and often people would come in only to find out that the case, for one reason or another, had to be adjourned, or that there was a problem and we just weren't ready to proceed. We can do all that preliminary work now and save significant time through a Zoom platform. So we've gotten very good, and judges are very trained on how to replicate a courtroom. if I have litigants before me with their counsel, I can move them into a breakout room, just like they were in court, and they could turn and talk to each other, which is a very important part of access to justice. Having an ability to talk to your lawyer as the case proceeds, things are happening, like to tell your lawyer that's not really true what you just heard, or wait a minute, here's the explanation. And so if everybody's on the Zoom platform, it may be difficult, but we've worked with breakout rooms now, so we could put the lawyer and the client in a breakout room, and they could have their confidential conference to bring to the court's attention anything that we need. We've gotten a lot better in looking at data, looking at our backlog and our aging reports. And in one sense, I guess there's a quality to the backlog. We have goals that we set for our docket types of what we think that the case should be resolved in. And so when we're over goal, there are some cases, I guess, that are way over goal, and some cases that are over goal. Well, we have to make sure that the ones that are way over goal get, I won't say any case is more important than the other case, but we have to get those older cases up front and make sure that we're not just cherry picking cases to bring our backlog down, but we're doing a quality assessment of cases that need to be looked at to be addressed.
I love that. I love the quality assessment. It's something that we talk about in business and in the legal industry as a general thing, right? And a lot of people don't view the court system like a business, or, because we were just trained to associate it differently. But unfortunately, it becomes a business somehow, right? With the registries and the courts and the employment and the in and outs and the operations of it all. It is generally like a business. But we just don't see it that way, right? So why are we implementing more and more of what we implement on businesses? Why aren't we implementing it on process development, quality assessment, data analysis? All these are terms that we use in the business world, whether in or out of the legal industry. So I love that you guys are actually, looking at that now, right? I have a funny story. I was literally pregnant with my attorney, and I were pregnant at the same time, and we had back-to-back trials. And so we were in the court, and this was obviously way before the pandemic. My daughter now is 6, so you can only imagine the time frame. And we were both around the same term. We were both like 3 or 4 months pregnant, so really early on. But here we are carrying, the banker boxes in our little wagons, and people are looking at us like we're crazy. And then we get there, and all of a sudden we need an outlet converter because of I guess the outlet was so outdated that our actual device wasn't, able to connect. So here we are, we're like, what? We don't have time for this. It's trial time, we're thinking the court has an outlet at least. And so, I love when you said about technology, how that is, time consuming, and that how it's, alleviating the time, right? And how it's managing those things. And I've seen trials, virtual now, which is great, obviously. And I knew it was going to be a hurdle, especially with the jurors and things like that. So I don't think we're quite there yet with the jury, but, non-jury trials.
Figuring it out. You are figuring it out.
Yeah.
I just wanted to pick up, you have to be compassionate and empathetic.
Yes.
There was a time where we would say, for instance, no phones in the courtroom. Well, you have a mom or a dad in court, and they may have some, a child care issue. Everybody wants to be accessible and things like that. And we have to, realize that people take days off, time off from work to be here. And as I always say to our judges here, I sit in New Jersey for 15 years as a presiding judge. We could pretty much drive to the courthouse with our eyes closed. I have my own parking spot. I'm on autopilot. But for a family to come into the courthouse, sometimes it could be 2 buses. Sometimes it could be a lot of anxiety and fear. They don't know what is going to happen. They know that they're facing allegations that may not be true. And how is the judge going to understand? Is the judge going to listen to me? And there's a lot of anxiety. And in addition to the cost of everything of traveling down here. So we have to be more efficient. We need people to have confidence in the system. We need the judges to be prepared. You know, when someone walks into the courtroom, I don't want to be leafing through and looking up and saying, okay, what's this case about? You know, we want to make sure our judges are ready and you know, personify being ready. They understand the issues. And that instills a lot of confidence. You know, keep in mind, not everybody's going to agree with what the outcome. Not everybody can win.
Right.
But they certainly can have confidence in the process and that they feel they were being heard. And so that has a lot to do with scheduling. You know, don't triple book yourself, which sometimes could be, you know, a tendency, especially when you confront backlogs. So you have to, you know, balance all that out. But, you know, we deal a lot with litigants whose language of preference or efficiency is not English. They're not proficient in English, and so I often wonder if I was in a country where I didn't understand. You know, I sort of, again, when we sit with our judges, I say, you know, let's say you were going in to get your car fixed and you came back with a big bill. You'd want to understand what happened. Take your time. You'd want the repaired person to really explain to you what happened and why it happened. And so, you know, we have to be very cognizant of that and make sure that folks that come into the court system understand the decision the judge made and why the judge made that decision. And that's all part of access to justice too. So you have confidence that you were heard and that this wasn't just a farce, especially when we deal with such crucial issues of parenting time, custody, children being relocated, and the like. And we have a very difficult docket that we spend a lot of time with at the National Council of Juvenile Family Court Judges in the child welfare system. And the way that works is we oversee the agency in a courtroom format that has a parens patriae responsibility to the children of the community. And that can sometimes result in the state of New Jersey, in my situation, or whatever state we're in, physically removing a child from the care and custody of their birth parents, of the biological parents, and putting that child in foster placement in a resource home. So when you have those parents that come before you, this is a nightmare. This is something that no one ever envisioned in the wildest dreams. And here they are, the world has blown up on them. And so you're going to talk about access. We're going to talk about access to justice. You have to make sure that you know what happened, that everybody's clear on what's going to happen and what needs to happen. And that, you know, that especially in the family part here, our job in this corner of the world is not to punish those parents. Our job is to help those parents, strengthen the parents, see what we can do to get the child back. And that may not be their perception when they walk into a courtroom. So there's all kinds of dynamics here. We need a diversity of judges. We need people to have confidence in who they're appearing before, judges that are aware. It's hard work. And quite frankly, it's not for everyone. We have a lot of judges that go into family, a lot of judges that go into civil, a lot of judges that go into the criminal part. As Superior Court judges, we could rotate through the various divisions. But those that come through family, you know, we work on the right fit. It's tough work. You got to really, again, have the patience. Sometimes we say we're judging without judging. We're just trying to get the folks to do what they may need to do to get to a better outcome. And we also, at the NCJFCJ, make sure that we have training materials. A lot of the access to justice is based on best practices to make sure judges are trained across the country with and are up to speed and up to date on the latest research. Domestic violence has evolved. There's so much to the dynamics of domestic violence and so much to the recanting by a victim or going back to the abuser. The judges have to understand this. And it's not just calling balls and strikes. And so that's where our organization comes in, because we are support systems through webinars, training materials, publications, best practices. So judges get the latest and greatest on how to handle these cases.
I mean, and I appreciate those efforts, because I think we need more programs like this. We talked about all the issues. Obviously, there's a lot of issues when it comes to this topic of access to justice, but it looks like you are coming up with solutions, right? With time efficiency, case management, data analysis. What was the other one that you said? I'm writing down notes here. So you also said about equity and inclusion, having a diverse set of judges from different perspectives, language barriers, right? So maybe one solution could be having certain translators, on staff, or, easily accessible, right?
Just interrupt you. Also, the literature.
Yes.
So that, when someone's in court and we have an interpreter, they'll understand what I'm saying, but a week later, they're not going to remember everything we talked about. They remember I walked them through the order of protection. Defendant can't do this, defendant can't do that, defendant can't do this. They get it, we're talking. Something happens 2 weeks later, they got a piece of paper that says what I said, but it may not be in their language of that they understand it. So things along those lines, the literature and the signage and the like.
Yeah, that makes a good point, because I know here in the state of Florida anyway, the complaint and the summons are in 3 different languages. So and that's automatic. I believe right now it's Spanish, English, and Creole. They're working on also getting Portuguese, because there's an influx of Portuguese speakers, especially here in South Florida, coming in from Brazil and Portugal. So they're actually working on implementing Portuguese as well. The ballots, when you have like a mail-in ballot or something like that, it's also in a variety of languages. So, I mean, we're getting there. I don't want our audience to feel like this is hopeless, right? Because I feel like sometimes when we highlight the problems, we don't highlight solutions. But there are solutions out there, and your organization and your position as well. I wish more people in your position would do more with that position, right? Sometimes we see politicians, or we see our advocates, or we see our community advocates, whatever they're called in your jurisdiction. We see these people and we're like, what are you, we put you there. What are you actually doing with this position? Especially now, elections have passed, and, we're looking at the results, and most of us are happy. Some of us are not, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on. But are you making a difference in your own community? I feel like sometimes the audience gets despaired, because we're legal professionals and we work in this legal industry, and we see, the dirty side of things, but we also see the happy sides, the happy endings. So we see all sides of the spectrum. So we may have a better perspective of what really goes on out there. But, things like the media, other organizations that are a lot more popular, may highlight what they want to highlight because of their mission. And so, I appreciate your hard work. And this is why I brought you onto the platform, because I want to let the audience know that there are programs out there. There are people out there fighting, for the people, right? Fighting, we are for the people, by the people, for the people. That's literally our, mission. So I love these solutions. And you actually have more solutions as well. So I want you to kind of continue with that.
So when we talk about, meeting the litigant where they are, the other thing that we're doing at our NCJFCJ conferences and a lot of our state trainings is we want to get folks who have real life experiences come and talk to us. And that's not always easy, because when people are in family court, but that's how I think that's the most impactful. When you can have a domestic violence victim that has gone through and, has had an outcome, or a defendant that has gone through and has an outcome. What worked, what didn't work, what was the takeaway. Now we deal with a lot of in our social welfare docket, the abuse and neglect docket and the like. We deal with a lot of children, and so who grow up, obviously. And so when we want to talk to them later, did you want to come and talk to the judge? Did you feel that the judge knew what your case was about? Did you feel that you had support? we have youth that are out of the home. You can only imagine the trauma that could be associated with that. And kids will self-identify. They think, oh, if I've only been better, this would not have happened, right? It's my fault. So we are making sure that we have all kinds of services in for the children, but we have to measure it somehow, the effectiveness of it. If we're on the right path, if we're doing the right thing.
Right.
Now, when we get these cases, Etta, we'll have a parent that may have a drug problem, but when we get the drug treatment going and everything, we learn that it's like peeling back an onion because there was unaddressed trauma as a child.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so that was never, obviously, it's unaddressed. It was never addressed, and it manifested itself with self-medication and medicating. And here we have someone that, we want to reunify that family. So we know that what happens to those children needs to be addressed, and we need to make sure that we're hearing from the children. So we implement best practices with a benchmark hearing. Bring the child in. It doesn't matter if the child's 5 or 15, in an appropriate circumstance, and make sure that, what we're doing in my state, my county, we're building a new courthouse. And in this particular docket, we're going to lower the bench a little bit. The judge doesn't need to be way up that high in this docket, so it's a little bit more of collaboration. What can we do to make this better? I'm not saying that people who do something wrong, we're going to resolve it. But when we're trying to figure out services and how to get a child home and things like that, we don't need a judge, 6 feet in the air. We can maintain decorum and what we need to do by bringing it down a little bit. And also, we don't need a plaintiff and a defendant in an adversarial setting. We can do maybe a horseshoe. So people, and that's kind of the things that we talk about and look at and learn from each other. I'm on the East Coast, you're on the East Coast, a lot of space between us. It's a huge country. Judges all across the country are trying different things. And so we want to share. And so we have conferences, 2 major conferences in our organization. We bring judges together from all parts of the country to talk about what they've done and what worked and what did not work. And that's all really, and I'm so happy for your topic, because I view that all as access to justice.
Absolutely.
It's all trying to make it so that people have a fair process. And in fact, when you invited us to come on, I took a look at our vision statement, and our vision statement is creating a society in which every family and child has access to fair, equal, effective, and timely justice.
I love it.
And so we thank you so much. And that's the basis of our organization. And the way we accomplish that, of course, is through best practices, through materials, through research, and being a voice for the family court in our country.
I'm totally with you on that, because our motto is changing the legal industry from the inside out, right? Because if we cannot create a safe environment for our legal professionals, then we cannot provide a safe environment for the people that we're serving. And just like these people coming into your courtroom or into the law firms or into corporate worlds or wherever they're at in the legal industry, we also have our own traumas and griefs. And what we were talking about prior to the recording is unconscious bias, right? We all carry this. And unfortunately, we do it unknowingly, right? We all know that story that's super popular about the surgeon and how, the surgeon at the end of the day was a female, but a lot of people don't understand. 9 times out of 10, not even the females would figure out that the surgeon was a female. So, we all carry these unconscious bias, whether it's through society itself with the labels that they place upon us. I always tell the story about when I opened up my business, I was always introduced when I went into other people's platforms as a mompreneur, woman entrepreneur. And I was like, take all that out of the equation. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm very proud to be a female and a mother and all the things. But at the end of the day, I built this empire on my own, and I did the hard work, and I want that recognition just because of me, not because of all the labels. And I think sometimes, and the audience can probably chime in on this later on, but sometimes society places those labels upon us, like you're a bad person, because you did a bad thing. And so, and then we go into court and it's solidified, right? Because it's granted or whatever it is. So you keep hearing that over and over and over, right? Which is what creates that negative bias. And that negative bias converts into that unconscious bias. So then you always think you're that bad person until somebody extends their hand and says, hey, you did a bad thing, but this is not all of you. You can change. We're human, we evolve, right? Obviously, we all know, whether it's science, religion, whatever it is, we evolved as human beings. And we're very complicated species. And unfortunately, with that comes complicated situations, complicated emotions and actions and reactions. So there's more to the court system, there's more to the legal industry that we need to unravel, that even science themselves have not been able to figure out. So, being empathetic and being understanding is a perfect way to start, and getting together. And like you said, having these conferences and having these conversations, which is really my podcast in a nutshell, is what I really want to highlight. But you were going to say.
Well, thank you. I was so intrigued what you're saying. I almost forgot it. I made a little note. What we did in our state, and what we do at the NCJJ, which is part of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, is data analysis. We did decision point analysis. I don't think anybody's going to tell you, I hope nobody that in our world here is going to tell you that they're overtly, biased. But when you start looking at decisions in a non-threatening manner, and you look at the data, and you look at decision point analysis, you can see disparities. So we all know that there's disparity in the system. Just look at the number of children in placement, and look at the proportion of our percentage of Black and brown children. And a lot of times, I'll tell you, years ago, and I'm here long enough that I sort of remember that, judges used to say, well, what do you want for, I didn't go out and remove the child. I'm the judge, I'm not the agency. They brought the child to the court. Well, now we're involved in judicial leadership. We're involved in what the criteria was and what the impact of the criteria is in that. And we start looking at decisions that are made along the way. When do kids go home? When do they not go home? What were the objective facts? And we try to draw, not in a learning way, in a way that we can learn from it to become better. It's just really just in my short time here, 15 years, just to see how we've evolved to make better outcomes and to make it more fair. We have those difficult discussions. We're encouraged to have those discussions. It's a pretty cool job when you can, talk about the issues of the day, so to speak, in a very meaningful, non-threatening, safe way, so that we can improve outcomes for families. It's exciting. And I want everybody to have confidence. The judges are really trying to do the right thing, evolve with the system. Look, we went from paper to paperless almost overnight. And a lot of guys my age, it wasn't that easy to all of a sudden not be able to take the brief home, but have to go online to find it somewhere. That's the world. And if you want to be efficient and stay with it, you got to change with it. Right. So it's kind of exciting. And we just welcome the opportunity to, talk about our organization, talk about what we do, shed a little spotlight on it, and can't thank you enough for the opportunity to talk about such an important topic, near and dear, which is the backbone of our vision of the organization, access to justice.
I think it's the backbone of the legal industry, really, because if we can't resolve the different sections of the access to justice, then no matter what we do as legal professionals, we're always going to fall short, and we've been falling short for quite some time. So it's really nice to see that whatever it was, whether it was the pandemic, whether it just was, from the grace of whoever you believe in, whatever it is, whatever happens, whatever triggered this movement, is amazing, and I feel like Hollywood, media, politics, it gets so, it's like the funnel, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people associate the legal industry with politics and everything they see on TV, and it's completely opposite. We have so many advocacy conferences and communities, local, national, global. I talk about Namati Global all the time. They're a great organization to join for free, and you can, give your time, give your hours, which is the best thing. I think is the most valuable thing you can do when you just give your time. A lot of people like to donate, and that's great. But once you give your knowledge and you give your time, I feel it's a little more impactful than versus, providing monetary value, which is also helpful.
We have lots of opportunities in our court systems for volunteers.
Yeah.
Whether it's through a CASA organization or domestic violence advocacy, or just a ombudsman type of court, personnel. And we're very, part of the access to justice is, of course, open courts. So we've made a way for our Zoom hearings to be open. Now, sometimes when we deal with a child, always when we deal with a child or a domestic violence type of situation,
right,
goes by law,
Right.
and everybody understands that. But for the most part, we're open. And
Yeah.
that's transparency, come into our courtrooms. Yeah, it's a little bit of effort to hook everybody up to the Zoom but it's public, and people have a right to see what we do, and we want them to see what we do, because it instills the confidence and some of the things you're talking about, that you'll see the way we try to get to the right decision has nothing to do with, hopefully nothing to do other than with the facts.
I think it's up to this point. There's no excuse to educate yourself, right? There's no excuse to copy and paste from a newsletter or a news media or whatever. The information is literally at your fingertips. So it's the responsibility of us to take it upon ourselves and create an educated opinion versus somebody else's opinion. And if it happens to be the same after you do your research, then that's great. But at least you're confident in your opinion and your stance in whatever it is that you are passionate about. And that's what I love about you and your mission and the organization. And especially the fact that you're a judge is just like, a cherry on top, because, we need that. We need that. You guys are literally the decision makers when it comes to anything, any dispute, any legal dispute. So I appreciate it. And me as a legal professional for over 20 years, I appreciate it even more, because I know that I can never do that. There's just some decisions that sometimes, unfortunately, you have to make, and I can see it in the judge's face that they're making it against their own will, right? But unfortunately, the law is a law, and they have to go by the law, right? Versus what they really want to say. And you can see it because we're human, and you can't hide that. I've seen judges cry when they're giving out a judgment. And unfortunately, that's just the way the world works. And I don't think a lot of people see that. We need to start humanizing, because the legal professionals are human. The people we serve are human. So at the end of the day, if we don't put the human back in humanity, the legal industry will never thrive the way it's supposed to. And we have such power in our knowledge that I feel like sometimes we ourselves think the opposite. Right? We don't know how much power we have wherever you are on the spectrum, whether you are the judge, whether you're the janitor, it doesn't matter.
Right.
We're all equal at the end of the day. And I appreciate your time, and your time is so valuable, especially to other people. I appreciate you being on the podcast. I appreciate what you're doing for the legal industry. And there's a lot of other people that I would love for them to join you. And
Well,
best you believe I will be one of them. I will definitely join you in your mission.
give us a call and come and see what we do.
Absolutely.
Courthouses and see firsthand how we it's almost like some companies, and you were talking before about equating to a business. Some companies do, I think they call it surprise shoppers or something. Somebody would go into a store that's, hired by the company itself to see how they're treated.
Yeah.
Well, we really want to understand how people go through our process. Are they met, at the window appropriately? If there's a mental health issue, Are we dealing with it? Are our folks at the intake window trained on how to deal with things like that? We're trying to look at the process from the beginning to the end, not just once they get into the courtroom, what happens in the courtroom.
Sure.
That's extremely important, but it's not the whole process.
Right.
And so we really want to look at it from, someone who's coming in a little anxious, a little nervous, a little, upset, very emotional type of situation. How, is it, do we have a place for them to sit? Is it, if they have a child, is there a place they can change a diaper, or whatever the case may be? We're trying, to have some type of childcare. So if a mom has to go to a DV trial, or a dad, they don't have to, juggle a child on their hip while they're trying to tell the judge why they need protection, because they can take care of the child. So they bring the child with them. That happens sometimes when you go into our corridors. And so, things like that we really are looking at and trying to make sure we can get grant funding and trying to make sure we can staff it, so that people can, focus on what they have to focus on, and not, try to comfort a child while they're pleading their case and they need help.
Exactly. I know. And it's so hard, and we had this conversation a little bit, about immigration law is kind of very similar to this. Sometimes it's the child themselves, that don't speak English or anything, trying to not get out of the country, stay in the country and not go back to their country. So, we see things in the legal industry that most people don't. And unfortunately, even as legal professionals, we get despaired. So it's really nice to see that there is hope and that there are organizations such as yours, really working hard and really thinking it through, right? Because I feel like any other business, you have to look at your business through its entirety, from the time the client comes in to the time the client comes out. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for being on the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. It's been much more than a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to what you guys have to do, and I will definitely be one of your followers from here on out.
Everything likewise. And we look forward to continue your relationship with you. So thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Until justice is served, I'll be here, guys. Bye.